Hi everybody, Rad Mom here. Welcome back to The Garden, where we do feminism from a materialist perspective. Today on the channel we have Robby and Brianna from Rising, and not only are they way out of their depth, they are touching on so many things that I have wanted to touch on for ages and haven't really found a way to work into the channel. So thanks guys, mwah mwah, and thank you for tuning in. I guess the main thesis of this video would be, hey Tucker, shut up. Please like the video if you enjoy my content and subscribe to the channel for more of it, and share it around wherever y'all social media, because we're trying to drum up to 1,000 to get me a little bit of money so I can save up to get out of my mother-in-law's house. And we're gonna drag feminism kicking and screaming back to the real world if it's the last thing I do.
A Canadian high school is facing calls to fire a transgender teacher after video circulated online of the instructor wearing enormous prosthetic breasts to work. Now, according to students, teacher Kayla Lemieux began transitioning from male to female about a year ago.
Kayla Lemieux. That's a fucking porn star name? Gross.
Despite the outrage, school officials defended Lemieux in a letter to parents, writing, quote, Oakville Trafalgar High School recognizes the rights of students, staff, parents, guardians, and community members to equitable treatment without discrimination based upon gender identity and gender expression.
Okay. I will say that watching him try and use that bandsaw with those enormous fake tits is comedy gold.
Fox News host Tucker Carlson had this to say about the situation earlier this week.
It's hard to believe this is happening, but we're sad to tell you it's not just happening in Canada. You see versions of it everywhere, including in this country. And to be clear, what this is, children being used as props in the sexual fantasies of adults. Children being used as props in the sexual fantasies of adults. Are you okay with that? Is any normal person okay with that? It's completely wrong. It's utterly outside the bounds of what's acceptable.
See, this is what I mean. Hey, Tucker, you know how you're maybe trying to help or something? We know what the best thing you could do to help this situation would be to shut the fuck up. You stole that argument. I know you stole that argument because I've seen it years ago in discussion forums about this topic where, you know, I just don't think that you were worried about this kind of thing back then. Because nobody in the media was worried about this kind of thing. 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. You stole that. It has rolled into just kind of part of the regular discussion on in RadFem communities on this topic. So congratulations, you're verbatim stealing our arguments now. No, shut the fuck up. Because this is what I have realized. It doesn't matter whether we boycott Tucker Carlson and his ilk or not. Whether we're there or not, if he's making our arguments for us, then anytime that we actually say any of these things, people are going to think that we got it from him.
What you're seeing is a society that hates children. You would have to hate children in order to sexualize them, because sexualizing children screws them up for life. Ask anyone to whom it's happened.
I don't think you need to hate children in order to traumatize them. What the fuck kind of argument is that? That's not one of ours, because that's dumb.
No one should put up with this. No parent should put up with this for 1 second, no matter what the law says. Your duty, your moral duty, is to defend your children. This is an attack on your children, and you should fight back.
This is an attack on your children, and you have a moral duty to fight back. Thank you for framing it as a moral panic, you fucking dickhead.
So this is a story that conservative media is very fired up about. Tucker brought it, I think, to the broader attention, although I saw some sites talking about it even before he did this in his monologue.
Yes, thank you, Robby. Some people were already talking about this. That's where he got most of his best arguments from.
Obviously, it feeds into this larger concern about what's being taught to children, the libs of TikTok kind of videos of teachers. You're trying not to laugh. I see you trying not to laugh.
No, please continue.
Okay, so
she can't even take it seriously. That's how thoroughly this shit is discrediting us and our arguments, okay?
The only point I really want to make with this story, and I have a take that is slightly different from Tucker. I forget about whether it's child sexual abuse. I don't know what grade she teaches. I don't know why she's doing this. We don't have to even get into the politicization of it. It's just not appropriate to dress like that at a job.
Thank you, Robby. It is inappropriate for anyone to be going around braless with their nipples hanging through their shirt, especially if you're a woman. I mean, really, if you want to go braless, be a man. You can have the biggest, most pendulous tits in the world and go braless as a man. No male privilege for you.
Just a job in general. outward-facing, not even a job with children. Like, if you're a bank teller, they're not going to hire you if you're dressed like that. It doesn't need to get into any
a bank
crazier.
teller's a little bit behind damn.
But you know what? They're not. If you walked in with a strap-on dildo, they're not going to hire you either. If you walk in like in a Ronald McDonald costume covered in pig's blood, they're also not going to hire you. It is fine to expect some small standards of professional behavior and dress.
But see, standards are exclusionary, Robby, and we can't have that.
Without getting into any even debates, a very politicized debate about gender and any of that thing, it is not appropriate to dress that way in a school or really most normal workplaces.
Yeah, I mean, of course that's true. Look, there are standards of dress and appropriateness. Now, it can be the case that those are applied differently to different people based on how they look. This woman's breasts are prosthetic, so it feels like a choice, and a choice that does seem unprofessional. However, there's a different kind of a discourse about how there are fuller figured women who happen to have larger breasts that are accused of dressing inappropriately at school when they're wearing like a long sleeve sweater and they can't help what they look like. That is what it is, and this is a different case.
I am so glad you recognize that, Brianna. I am so glad you recognize that this fella and his fake tits are not an example of a conversation we need to be having about full-figured women in sweaters. I'm so glad that you recognize that those are two different things. Can we maybe name the difference here? No? Okay.
I will say that the only thing that really strikes me about this story is kind of why it's a story at all. We're talking about a woman who does not live in the United States of America, who's being used as an example of the crisis that is happening in our own country about kids and sexualization of youth and left gone amok. This is a Canadian woman who is, following rules that are not set by me or set by some school district in a land far away.
Land far away? Not my problem. It's happening over there. Why are we politicizing this thing that has clear political implications? Why are we politicizing it when we could just send thoughts and prayers?
And so
land far away. It's Canada.
I mean, that's none of my business. Okay. I haven't gone to Canada in many years.
But you have gone there. It's almost like it's not that far away.
This just is not my business. So, I just want to ask the question, why is it that instances like this get so much attention on shows like this? I have no interest in defending some bizarro choice to wear mega large breasts. It is what it is. I have my own personal feelings about it. Most people probably share those.
Brianna has no real interest in defending sex offenders. That's a good line to draw.
But why is this being politicized in the way that it is? And from my perspective, it feels like Tucker Carlson is trying to use these fringe cases to ratchet up distaste for members of our own fellow community.
I think Tucker Carlson is definitely trying to use this to ratchet up viewership for his own show. The thing about it is, these aren't fringe cases. These things just keep on happening. They keep popping up again and again and again and again. So help me, it really is a bit like the lone wolves, isn't it? Where these things just keep on happening and the media is like, what? Why is everybody so worried about this one person? Because it's not one person. It's not an isolated incident. There are entire websites dedicated to chronicling this phenomenon. Do a little research, guys. Do some journalism.
I mean, I think this person is getting the attention they obviously sought. You don't dress like that and want to unobtrusively pass through society. It's an attention. It is obviously an attention-seeking move that has now garnered serious national attention.
Yes, and that particular mode of being is called exhibitionism. It's not appropriate for any workplace, much less in front of children. This man is using them as props. He is forcing them to look at him like that. Now Tucker Carlson's made that point, so that's all anyone is going to think about. Yay.
I don't want this person to get death threats or harassment or whatever else they're going to get. But look, the reason we're talking about it, in addition to it just being kind of salacious, is that it mirrors the whole. So parents are uncomfortable with this.
Mm-hmm. Oh boy, here we go with non-parents talking parenting again. My time to shine.
At that school, and they're saying they're uncomfortable, and the school is saying, too bad. And that is similar to some debates we're having in our own country, not in the far-off land of Canada.
Yes, obviously it mirrors what's going on in our own country. It's almost as if the United States and Canada have a large, porous border and share media, radio stations. Like, there are places where school children have to go on the bus from America to Canada and then back to the United States. You cannot just sit there and go, oh, that's a Canadian problem. That's none of my business. Yes, this is all one big pattern that is emerging in our society, and if you don't like it, well, I would really recommend that you pay attention to it sooner rather than later, because it's only going to get worse.
About how schools responded to parental feedback about what the curriculum is, what the COVID policies are, etc. Parents
Like
very dissatisfied.
What kind of feedback?
Like
Because
the Loudoun County type stuff.
So what specifically was the criticism there?
That was the angry school board meetings where, so they were mad about, they said the school district had not properly responded or notified parents about sexual assault that had occurred that involved someone that was gender fluid or something like that.
That's right. It was about the sexual assault of a young girl in a bathroom by a boy in a skirt. But that's a really rough narrative, isn't it? For anyone who is supporting, trans people getting to use the facilities for their gender identity. A boy in a skirt, in any permutation, assaulting a girl in a school bathroom is just really, really a rough narrative for them to roll with. So they didn't. And they made the whole thing about critical race theory. Southern people are racist. Loudoun County, Virginia is actually not that far from here. I've not heard a damn thing from other parents about critical race theory. Not a damn thing. But you know what I do hear about every once in a while? Is concerns about the, transitioning children. Kids wanting to use facilities that they should not be permitted to use. That's an actual concern. And that is what the Loudoun County thing was about initially. But golly, they sure didn't want to talk about that, did they?
I looked more into that case, and you can go back and look at my past radars, and I think it was much more complicated than either side was willing to concede. But look, you can't deny there's a lot of anger at a lot of school district meetings because the parents feel they're not...
Anger at a lot of...
Okay, there's some.
She has no fucking idea about Loudoun County. She has no idea. And the only reason he knows anything about it is because he looked into it.
Virginia, there's some.
It's hard because I don't want to minimize what happened in any given place and the concerns that parents have.
But that is exactly what you are doing. That is exactly what you consistently do. You consistently minimize these things. You're sitting there giggling about it. I don't want to minimize. Then fucking stop.
The only question is, why is this a national issue? And why is the party that is so focused on states' rights and communities being able to work out their own issues forcing all of this minutia onto the broader public?
That is a good question. Why is this a Republican bailiwick? Obviously the people who are supposed to be concerned about safeguarding the system, looking out for the downtrodden and all of that, are a bit busy supporting this craziness. There's really no one left to call any kind of common sense, except for the people who consider themselves the arbiters of common sense, conservatives. There really aren't any egalitarians around, and the liberals have left us in the lurch. Why is this a national issue? I don't know. That's a really good question. Why don't you ask Joe fucking Biden's administration when their first priority, apparently on their very first day, was to rewrite Title IX and take, my daughter's rights away. Why is this an issue? That's a really good question. Why don't you ask the people who are making this an issue? Like, the weirdo who insisted on making those kids watch him wear giant fake tits with nipples sticking out. Ugh.
I think if you don't like what your school is teaching or the way the teachers behave.
Go talk about it to your school board. God bless you.
Well, and if they tell you to get lost, then you should be able to go to a different school.
No, Robbie. If your school board is doing something that upsets you just so much, and they tell you to go suck eggs about it, then you run for the school board. You don't just leave your home to the whims of evil fate. Like, who does that? Who thinks that way? Oh, I guess we're about to talk about how a lot of white people think that way. I think a lot of privileged people think that way. I think perhaps people who don't really understand how economics work because they've never had to think that way.
Everybody has their right.
You should be able to take the money invested on your behalf in that school and take it to another school.
Yeah, I mean, you can do that, and we'll have crumbling school infrastructure, rising
We'll have
crime
crumbling
rates.
schools in the schools
Wait a minute. Yeah, well,
hire people like this.
Robby, that's called vouchers, and they're not a good idea. We don't need allocation of school funds to be determined on an individual case-by-case basis. That's insane. Because the allocation of funds is what the government is supposed to do. That's what the bureaucratic infrastructure of elected officials and whatnot is supposed to do. That's supposed to be one of their jobs. It's the allocation of funds. And the thing about that is it's been hollowed out from the inside for decades all over this country. And probably all over the Western world, just based on the similar outcomes we're seeing everywhere, so that it is incapable of performing its job. But that doesn't mean that conceptually this isn't how it's supposed to work, okay? We already have crumbling schools. We already have a crumbling educational system because the fucking infrastructure that's supposed to be maintaining it has been hollowed out from the inside. The solution is not to go just allocating funds willy-nilly as individual parents see fit. Speaking as an individual parent, that is not the answer.
Well, no, we'll have crumbling schools in the schools that people fled from. And that's the story of a lot of what happened to these urban schools in the 1960s and early 70s when integration was forced. When the government finally said it was no longer legal to segregate schools, the consequence was that there was white flight. People picked up and left, as was their right and their ability to do so. But now these urban areas, which are still capital cities and important economic centers for all of these states, have ongoing problems with poverty and the resulting crime. And so there's no such thing as leaving your community. There's no such thing as abandoning the community. We all live here in the United States of America. We have to figure out how to do it together.
Thank you, Brianna, for saying that we all live in this one giant community together and we need to work together, because I completely agree with that, and that is the most egalitarian thing I think I've ever heard in my life.
And I'm just not convinced that this kind of rhetoric is helping that cause.
I will only respond to that quickly, just to say, you're right, that happened, but in that case, that was people, whites were fleeing who could afford to leave. What I'm advocating is we would make it affordable for everyone to leave, because we would use that money and just give it to, in that case, it was people who couldn't afford.
But, like, Robby, flee to where? Where are they going? The suburbs, which are so completely disconnected from urban centers where all the commerce actually happens, that they are beginning to rot from the inside themselves? Because nobody wants to fucking live there? Where are they going? What are you talking about, Robby? This is ground that's already been tread, and if you had read on this topic, you would know that. You guys, it's really a shame. You got dressed up all nice and have your lovely background with your nice desk and everything. Why don't you maybe do a journalism once in a while?
This is not the time to have a charter school debate. This is a time to talk about what cup size exactly would be appropriate.
This is not a time to debate either of those things. This is a time to figure out how exactly the fuck we got here. How exactly the fuck did that man think that it was okay for him to go into a classroom like that? How in the fuck did that man get it into his head that he was going to get away with that?
For a given professor?
This is definitely not the time to talk about that. You're going to get me canceled, Brianna. Oh boy! All right, we managed to end that block. Tomorrow on Rising, we're going to dig into what we.
Jesus, see, look at her. She's not even taking this seriously, and he's just happy that he got through it alive. It's not about the cup size. It's not about the cup size, okay? Because those are not real breasts. You yourself just said a few minutes ago that this is not the conversation about full-bodied women. That's not what this is. This is a man wearing fake tits into a classroom and trying to work a bandsaw. If those were real, ooh, I feel like she wouldn't be leaning across it like that. You know why? Because if they get caught in that motherfucker, they don't come off. It's a man wearing fake tits to a school, to a classroom, as a hypothetically professional individual who is entrusted with the instruction of children. How in the world did he wake up one morning and think that this was going to be okay? How did we get here? Why in the world was that something that he thought was going to be acceptable? Whatever the answer to that question is, we should fix that. So yeah, hooray! Tucker Carlson brought this stuff to mainstream attention. Thanks, I hate it. I'm really, really uncomfortable with being associated with that man and anyone like him. This is just too much. And if y'all want an example, a beautiful, perfect example of why we cannot be associated with these people, it is because anyone who is going to be in any way sympathetic to any of the shit that we talk about or have any idea what egalitarianism fucking means, then we sure as shit cannot be seen with Tucker Carlson. Now he's just stealing our arguments verbatim. I can't wait to see what the next one is. We've got to brainstorm here and come up with some way of differentiating ourselves from the right-wing weirdos who also appreciate that material sex exists because they want to oppress us. They understand women exist and they think that we should be in the kitchen. Conservatives are not our friends. The fact that he has any kind of credibility to speak on these topics just makes me so angry because he shouldn't. Very basically any metric whatsoever. He's not a woman. He's not a person of color. He's not trans. He's none of that. He wears a fucking bow tie. And yet for some reason, he is the only fucking person making any arguments on this topic and I just hate it so much. Hey Tucker, shut the fuck up, honey. Please. Okay? Just get the hell out of the argument. This kind of help we don't need. As for you, wonderful ladies, thank you so much for sticking with me and slogging through that. There was a lot there. Robby and Brianna are over their heads a lot these days. I just can't help but jump in sometimes. It seems like they need a helping hand. Thank you so much for hanging in the garden with me where we do feminism from a materialist perspective. And I will be seeing y'all next time. Bye!